Pregame.com.
Welcome back on pregame.com. I'm Pauly Howard. That's Teddy Covers. The big boys come out this weekend. The 1 and the 2 seeds for the divisional round. We'll go through all 4 games, and we start with Saturday afternoon, Baltimore at New England. First things first, can you say Harbaugh has Belichick's number? Because Belichick has 3 home playoff losses, 2 of them are to Harbaugh.
Yeah, I mean, you can certainly say that Harbaugh has been a thorn in Belichick's side. I wouldn't necessarily say that he had his number. Many times, at least in theory, I think Baltimore had the better team. And I'm not convinced that this year's Ravens version is as good as the teams that went into Foxborough in the past and were able to win.
How much credit do they deserve for beating the Steelers?
Some, they went on. I mean, this is it's a veteran team and it's a confident team, and there's something to be said for a team that has this level of experience as a core group winning together on the highway. Joe Flacco, his last 5 playoff games, 13 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, obviously playing at a very, very high level. You look at what the Ravens have been able to do in Foxborough, winning twice in the postseason, covering the spread in all 3 recent postseason matchups. The only game they lost was, of course, the game where Billy Cundiff.
Oh, yes. And Lee Evans stripped.
Sure.
Touchdown.
Absolutely. But Baltimore was live throughout in that contest. So there's a measure of confidence that the Ravens have on this field that other teams really don't have.
Mm-hmm. And it helps that they get Edelman back for the Patriots because the offense didn't show up the last 2 games. Run it down. What do you think of this matchup?
Yeah, well, let's talk about some of the props here. I've got the updated numbers from the Westgate here in Las Vegas. Joe Flacco over under 22.5 completions. That's minus 120 to the over. Over under 1.5 touchdown passes from Flacco, and that number seems a little bit short in general. We have Tom Brady over under 280.5 passing yards, over under 2 touchdown passes. Total sacks for these teams over under 3.5. Rob Gronkowski over under 80.5 total receiving yards. As we talked about, Joe Flacco, more road wins in the postseason than any quarterback in NFL history. New England, how about 3-7 against the spread? Their last 10 in Foxborough in the postseason. They haven't been getting the job done in this role. Baltimore has. But boy, and look at Brady's quarterback rating in the 3 games against Baltimore, 56.3.
He was awful in the last AFC Championship meeting. And I know it was strange because New England was in control, and then Talib got hurt, and it changed everything because he was on Bolden, and then Baltimore was going up and down the field.
Sure, and one thing that we can say for sure is the Patriots' defense, I say this with confidence, Patriots' defense is better than it's been.
Yeah.
In any recent playoff meeting. And Baltimore's defense isn't. There are holes in the secondary. Pittsburgh wasn't able to take advantage of them last week thanks to the fierce Baltimore pass rush that was in Roethlisberger's face all day. So in my mind, that's the fundamental matchup. If New England can control Baltimore's pass rush, Brady's live to pick apart that secondary. If they can't, Baltimore's live to win.
Yep, good points there. Saturday night, Carolina at Seattle. Carolina beat Arizona. Who cares?
Arizona beat themselves.
Oh my God! How about you have to sweat that game out if you bet Carolina and they had Arizona at 70 yards?
I had a losing bet on Arizona last week. A losing bet, and it wasn't at no point did you feel good about the contest. Even at halftime, when they go into halftime with the lead, you're not saying, "Oh, I'm really confident with this wager," but they got their butts kicked from beginning to end. And we're still live to cover the spread with 1 red zone turnover in the 4th quarter was the difference between covering that spread and not covering the spread. So for as bad as Arizona was, Carolina left them alive and left them in the game to win it.
Seattle laying a big number. They've been money at home. This defense has been incredible the last 6 games. Since that loss to Kansas City, they've really turned it around. And now with the 1 seed, a favorite to go to the Super Bowl. But when Carolina and Seattle meet, these have been low-scoring games.
Every one of them. I've watched all 3 of these games over the last 3 years. 16-12, 12-7, 13-9. All 1-score games, all low. The offensive numbers in both games were atrocious. Neither team was able to move the football effectively throughout. Carolina in particular, obviously when you score 12, 7, and 9, you're not doing a whole lot offensively. And in fact, Cam Newton in those 3 games combined has guided the offense to 1 touchdown and 4 field goals, averaging less than 250 yards per game. And it's hard to project Carolina to be able to move the football much easier this time around. Again, you look at last week. They started, they had the ball in Arizona's territory 11 times in that ball game. 11 times. You're supposed to get a lot more points than you did when you have the ball in your opponent's territory 11 times. 6 of their drives started inside their own 40, and from those 6 drives, they got a grand total of 3 points. Now, Arizona's punter had an atrocious game last week. I was ready to. I wasn't happy.
Butler, 5 punts at 33 yards or less.
Yeah, it was
Come
tough.
on.
It was tough. I would not anticipate that happening from Seattle. They've had they got great special teams, and their punting game has been very good all year. So you have to project Carolina to be starting drives inside their own 40 against the Seahawks. And this offense, may not be capable of marching the ball down the field against, let's see, the NFL's number 3 rush defense, number 1 pass defense, number 1 scoring defense, number 1 total defense. They've allowed only 39 points combined in their last 6 games, going 6-0 straight up and 6-0 against the spread. But of course, Paul, when you go in to the postseason on that kind of a run, man, there's a little bit of a tax attached to your point spread, and we're seeing that here with Seattle laying double digits in a series that I talked about earlier has been very, very competitive.
Sunday, monster matchup. Dallas.
Hang on one second. Let me just throw out the props real quick for Saturday. Cam Newton over under 18.5 completions, over under 38.5 rushing yards for Cam Newton. Russell Wilson, 222.5 over under passing yards. Marshawn Lynch, 85.5 rushing yards over under, and the quarterback sacks at 4.5 for the two teams combined.
Sunday, Dallas at Green Bay, 8-0 on the road against 8-0 at home. We taped this Wednesday. Rodgers didn't practice. See if he can stay in there with the calf injury. Controversial win. Obviously, the Cowboys will take it, down 14-0, and, well, here they are. But I think they could get run out, though, with Rodgers throwing the ball on the secondary. And we know the Dallas defense has been smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, and I mean, Dallas has been able to mask the flaws in their defense in large part because the offense has been so good. What they've been able to do is play a ball control strategy, use their 3 first-rounders on the offensive line to blow open holes for DeMarco Murray, and control the clock on the ground, keep the defense off the field. There's a problem here, though, with DeMarco Murray. He had more rushing attempts than anyone in the league by a wide margin, 392 in the regular season. That was like 80 more than the number 2 guy in the NFL. When you look at the first 335 carries, and the reason I broke it down to 335 carries is because that is the average over the last 5 years of the most carries from the top back and from the back who's carried the most in the league. The first 335 carries, Murray averaged 5 yards per carry. Since that time, 3.3 yards per carry. And yes, last week came against Detroit. Detroit's got a great defense up front. They faced Washington, they faced Indy, they faced Philly. We're not talking about elite run defenses. Murray right now is not the same back that he was in November and October and September when he was carrying this offense. He's just not. Meanwhile, you look at Aaron Rodgers. How about this at home this year? 25 touchdowns, the big goose egg for INTs. Amazing. And that's why Green Bay is perfect at home. And stop with the 8-0 on the road. Dallas is 7-0 on the road, 1-0 in a neutral site, and they get credit for going 8-0 on the road, which, admittedly is splitting hairs, but it's a fact. I mean, they keep saying it was count as a road game when they played Jacksonville in London. It's worth noting when it comes to pass rush here, Green Bay 39 sacks in the season, Dallas only 25. Let me talk about some of the props real quick. Romo over 21.5 completions, Murray over under 95.5 rushing yards, Aaron Rodgers 300.5 passing yards over under on what's going to be a very cold day in Green Bay. And he's the only quarterback this weekend that has a 2.5 as his over under for his passing touchdown number. Of course, the under there is -140. Total quarterback sacks is 4, -110 either way.
Okay, final game Sunday, Colts at the Broncos. I don't know if the Colts are a good team. Congratulations, you beat the Bengals, but it was the JV team, no Green, no Gresham. They couldn't do anything.
No Burfict. I mean, Maluga got hurt. I mean, it was a mess on both sides of the ball for Cincy last week.
Luck's a terrific quarterback.
Amazing.
But they can't run the ball.
Nope.
Their defense is below average.
Well below.
Wayne's banged up.
Yep.
Hilton's dropping the ball. I don't know if he's 100%. So they won 26-10, but it wasn't pretty. And outside of that Hall of Fame throw to Moncrief, they didn't do much on offense either. So here they go on the road where dome teams outside have struggled, especially when it's cold, And we'll see what the Broncos can do as they're getting everyone healthy, and we'll see. Here we go with Peyton Manning again now. Here we go.
What's Manning's numbers? You want to throw those out there one more time for us?
11-12, straight up. The 12 losses a record. 8 one-and-dones. The only other quarterbacks have 4. The highest, you know what I'm saying. 12 of the losses.
8 one-and-dones.
8 one-and-dones, yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. 10 of the 12 losses, they were favored. 1 game-winning drive. The year they won the Super Bowl, 3 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. He's lost to Fiedler, Pennington, and Sanchez.
Yeah, that's not the pretty long-term track record, but it's Peyton Manning, you know. Peyton Manning can sell insurance like nobody's business. He can sell pizzas like nobody's business. He did not play his best football down the stretch of this season. That being said, I'm with you on Indy, and, you know, it's going to start up front. You know, when we talk about where NFL games are decided, they're decided in the trenches. And this is one game where Denver has a huge edge in the trenches. The Colts started their 11th different offensive line combination last week against Cincinnati. The only guy who's played all year and started every game at the same position is the left tackle, Anthony Costanzo. He's played every game, but other than that, it's been a constant juggling of guys in and out of the lineup. There's not a lot of rhythm and chemistry to that Colts offensive line. It's a big part of the reason why they haven't been able to run the football at all this year, and it's a big part of the reason why they lost at Denver early in the season. And remember, the final score is going to say 31-24. It's going to call it a push. Denver dominated that game. Indy came back and got a couple of garbage touchdowns in the fourth quarter to make the final score look reasonable. But, you know, we look at the Colts on the road this year against playoff teams. Again, I talked about the Denver game, the Pittsburgh game. They lose 51-34. The game wasn't that close. That game was over by halftime. The game at Dallas, okay, it was a throwaway game for Indy, but you know what? If they come and play, maybe they hang around in that game. They had nothing going. They got destroyed. They lost that game 42-7. So it's been 3 road games against playoff quality opposition, and the Colts have lost all 3 of those games by margin. Their defense hasn't been able to get stops in any of them. Now, the Colts had 482 yards of offense against Cincy last week. This week they have a pass rush where they're going to be facing Von Miller and 14 sacks. DeMarcus Ware had 10 this year. And as a team, Denver 41 sacks, and they allowed only 17. Manning was only put on his butt 17 times all year. So that's definitely an advantage for the Broncos. And the weather forecast doesn't look too bad either.
Can't believe it. In the 40s. It's unbelievable with this guy. 3 years in a row now in the playoffs. He's walking into good weather.
You know, Denver 8-0 at home this year. They scored 31+ 6 times during that span, including the first game against Indy. They may well be able to do it again here. The Broncos certainly don't have a track record worthy of a ton of support. You talked about Manning with the all-time record for most playoff losses. 8 one-and-dones.
Most of those is a 1 or a 2 seed.
Oh, yeah.
Big favorite.
For sure. And they're in that spot here. But I really do have concerns about Indy's, how well Indy can match up here. I think it's going to be a tough matchup for the Colts on the offensive line. And overall, I don't think they'll be able to do anything except for throw the football against Denver, and that may not be a recipe for beating the Broncos with their pass rush and with their strong secondary.
Quick hits on all 4 games. Now, let's make it official for the free pick.
Yeah, let's go back to Carolina, Seattle, and talk about, again, the 3 recent matchups where neither team has been able to move the football. That Panthers defense has been dynamite down the stretch. I've got my issues with their offense. Last week, Cam Newton had 10 passes to his wide receivers. They totaled 84 yards. They're not making big plays downfield, and it's not going to be easy to make big plays downfield against Seattle. What do the Seahawks want to do? They want to hand the ball off to Marshawn Lynch 30 times and let the beast grind it out on the ground. I don't think it comes easy for Seattle. I don't think it comes easy for Carolina, and it's hard for me to fathom these 2 teams getting to 40 points. Let's take the Panthers and the Seahawks under the total 39.5. That'll make it official.
Nice work, Teddy.
Pleasure's mine.
There you go. All right, let's go back to 2004, the last time we had all chalk get to Championship Sunday. Our home team figures to go down. We'll see what happens when we come back next week. Good luck out there, and thanks for watching on pregame.com.